Hi, I'm BlackCreek Carlisle, Onyinyechi-Chipo. I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about what I've written on improvisation and freestyle, connecting the element of improvisation that is in all African derived musics, or musics from the African diaspora throughout the Americas, North, South, and Central. And that includes the African American music traditions, as well as Afro Latin music traditions, and all the names that come under those. From reggae to merengue to, I don't know, salsa to jazz, hip-hop, rap, gospel. They all contain the element of improvisation, okay, which is an African element. And they all contain, if not all of those, the African elements, they all pretty much contain elements such as, that are African, such as call and response, improvisation, blue notes, altered tone alteration, percussiveness, you name it, it's in those musics. So we have much to give thanks to Mother Africa, and especially those Africans in the Americas who were brought or who were enslaved during the transatlantic slave trade. We call those people, we now call, some of us, the Black Atlantic Diaspora. I'm just going to start with, just briefly, we're going to go through this pretty brief and simple. These are notes from my book, Free Jazz Improvisation, a Continuum from Africa to Congo Square, and so on and so on. For transcendence beyond oppression, okay, for healing and transcendence is the purpose of all our musics. The music is the soundtrack to our lives that keeps us going. That is the importance of music. Although in our country we don't seem to fully appreciate music or give it the honor that it deserves, especially jazz and the blues, which is the root of all of the music of the African diasporas, those blue notes, the blues. It wouldn't be any gospel without the blues. There wouldn't be any jazz without the blues. There wouldn't be any rock and roll without the blues. There wouldn't be any R&B or hip-hop, nothing without the blues. Those African, West African blue notes, and all those African elements that I spoke of earlier. So Sufi mystic Hazrat Inayat Khan, the one who was a sacred musician but got so deep in his practice and work that he decided he cannot do music anymore. Okay, so Hazrat Inayat Khan said in his 1923 talk that he later published in Cannes 1991, a singer in the East never knows what he is going to sing before he starts singing. This is speaking on the art of improvisation, or the element of improvisation. Also in Indian music, East Indian music, musics of what we call Pakistan too. He feels the atmosphere of the place. This is talking about the musician from the East. And actually that would include Africa. He feels the atmosphere of the place and the time, and he begins to sing or to play whatever comes to mind. Charters, in his book, refers to Zora Neale Hurston regarding her words on the African tradition of improvisation found in the Georgia Sea Islands church he visited as follows. In Charters 2009, music with its roots in the years of slavery was still a living presence. It was music that was meant to be sung together. The voices free to enter and drop out, the clapping as unexpected as the wind. The song became, as Hurston insisted, a new creation at the same time that it was an affirmation of the strength of a long, well-worn tradition. And of course, Zora Neale Hurston was not only an anthropologist, one could say an ethnomusicologist as well, but a scholar and author who did quite a bit of research in her area of South Florida and really honored the people and the traditions handed down from Africa to those regions because they were really retained there, because it was a more isolated place. So that the Africans there, though they were enslaved, they continued many of their traditions today. And that would be the people, the Gullah traditions, Geechie and Gullah traditions of South Florida. But he's speaking of the improvisation that takes place during the singing of the music in the church, and the stomps and the claps and all of that percussiveness is a part of our African American traditions with roots in Africa, of course. On the importance of the drum and percussion or percussiveness, which is another African element of all musics of the African diaspora. And African American music's part of that. Jones Baraka, Amiri Baraka, also known as Leroy Jones. In 1963, he said, "The reason for the remarkable development of the rhythmic qualities of African music can certainly be traced to the fact that Africans also used the drums for communication, and not, as was once thought, merely using the drum in a kind of primitive Morse code, but by phonetic reproduction of the words." It was speech-like. Phonetic reproduction of the words themselves, the result being that Africans developed a very fine and extremely complex rhythmic sense, as well as becoming unusually responsive to timbral subtleties. So when we talk about percussiveness, we're also talking about polyrhythms, and we're also talking about pitch bending for the meaning in the oral traditions, being everything interconnected to create this music. And to communicate and to help us to survive and thrive in all conditions. Wilmer, in 1977, said, "You pick up the drum and you think of the black man," said Milford Graves. He's quoting Milford Graves, a jazz innovator on the drum. "You generally think of Africa and you think, well, this is really culture. And just as anything else by the black people has been suppressed, so the drum has been along with it. It was a great factor in Black America, okay? And I think this is why it was suppressed, because it played a major part in their whole lifestyle. During slavery, just after the Haitian Rebellion, overturning slavery there, with the exception of Congo Square in New Orleans, the drum was actually banned by the British in America, okay, to prevent any other uprising. There was no place you could drum in the whole country other than Congo Square in New Orleans, because that was a French colony still at that time. First the Spanish, then the French. So the rules were more lenient there. French were still there. And even during, though it was slavery. So even till today, that's Congo Square, the birthplace, one of the simultaneous birthplaces of jazz, where the Africans gathered in their drumming ceremonies. That was the only place you could drum continuously from slavery to now. They're still there. So they're still drumming today in that sacred place where the tribes gathered. And out of that came our jazz tradition. So just going on, it was banned to prevent any more rebellions, because how did the Haitians get their, how did they strengthen themselves? At their drumming ceremonies, at their spiritual ceremonies, their spiritual gatherings, the Vodun, okay? And that's why they have taken our African spirituality that is called Vodun, that has many names in many places, many derivatives, Candomblé, Santeria, Yoruba. They have taken that and they have distorted Vodun in particular, because the Haitians were able to gather and they used their ceremonies and they used that time to strengthen themselves and remember who they were and to organize. And they fought the French and got won their freedom. So they had to distort that and distort all things African. Okay. So it was banned, the British in the Americas, and also in America and in the Caribbean, where the British were enslavers. They banned the drum. They were enslavers, and later colonizer, whatever, but they banned the drum because it was thought that it could be used to incite revolts. It was an emotive link with Africa. As I stated before, reminding you who you are, whose you are, your humanity, your spirituality, your history, your culture, your languages, your connection, your family, your ancestors, whatever would strengthen you. That drum was a reminder of that. That is the importance of the drumming. The link with Africa, the link with your homeland, whether you're indigenous, whatever your culture and history and whatever it is, that is the link. The drumming and ceremonies of Native Americans or First Nations or Indigenous peoples in these Americas, North, South, and Central, but also Indigenous people all over the world. What we call in the Americas, what we call Turtle Island, as it was called by some nations within the indigenous cultures. Those drums were suppressed as well for hundreds of years. The drumming, the ceremonies, the sweat lodges, everything, that it was demonized. Just like all the African traditions and African spirituality is demonized. But for today, things are changing for the indigenous, but they are slow to change for the Africans. Even the Africans are afraid of their own spirituality because they've been so miseducated about themselves. These history books have been whitewashed and have distorted who and what they were and left out who and what they were and who and what they are, because we are the ancestors. The blood runs in us. Just like the Pan-Africans or Africans all over the Americas, North, South, and Central America, also in Mexico, forcibly brought here as enslaved human beings. This is why the drums were so crucial to black, brown, and red people, even today, and even yellow people, all peoples, all indigenous peoples of their various lands. These drums are crucial. Having the drumming ceremonies, the rites, as even taiko in Japan, just remembering who you are. Wilmer says, some Africans believe that it was through the sound of the drum that God gave man the ability to speak or to understand one another. So this is in a way symbolic or figurative, but it is like how close the drum is to them. And you know, in our music, the drum is the heartbeat. It transmits the pulse, the energy, the basic feeling of the music. So this is something that is very, very close. I remember Billy Higgins, founder of the World Stage, one of the founders of the World Stage, where I'm a part of, he stated once that the drum is the mother, and that if he's not playing, if others don't sound good, he's not doing his job. He's supposed to help them. Dealing on the circle of communal spirit or community, most important, community. We have lost community. We have to re-establish community, the most important factor for our people. In this time of genocide, the